I never thought much about Rachel, my boss's wife. To be honest, she always seemed a little distant, too polished for someone like me. I knew her mainly from the occasional corporate events and office meetings where she would sit quietly in the background, always a bit removed from the real business talk. But one afternoon, everything changed. It was one of those typical office days, the kind that blends into each other when time just seems to drag on. I was stuck in a meeting trying to keep up with a project that seemed to be getting more complicated by the minute. After the meeting wrapped up, I headed to the break room to grab some coffee. As I walked in, I almost didn't notice her standing by the window staring out into the street. Rachel. She turned when she heard the door open and gave me a small, almost apologetic smile. She was dressed in a simple black dress that in any other situation would have looked understated, but on her, it looked effortlessly elegant. The kind of elegance you can't fake. Evan, right? She said, her voice softer than I expected. Yeah, that's me. I nodded awkwardly, not really sure why she was speaking to me. Can I help you with something? I just wanted to thank you, she said, her tone casual, for your help with the proposal for Mr. Carter's project. He didn't mention it, but I heard it went well. I was surprised. Mr. Carter, my boss, didn't often acknowledge anyone's work unless it directly benefited him. But Rachel seemed to have a different view. Oh, it was no big deal, I replied, scratching the back of my neck, suddenly self-conscious. She smiled again, but there was something behind her eyes, something tired, something that suggested she wasn't just making small talk. I know it must be a bit odd seeing me here like this, but you're one of the few who actually seem to care about the work, she said, glancing around almost as if to make sure no one else was listening. I blinked, unsure how to respond. Most people didn't pay much attention to her, let alone talk to her like this, but her words struck me. There was a vulnerability in her voice that made me uncomfortable, yet curious. Well, I'm glad it was helpful. I don't really know how else to explain it, I said, trying to brush off the awkwardness. She tilted her head slightly, her eyes locking with mine. You know, Evan, it's rare to meet someone who doesn't just see me as Mr. Carter's wife. I appreciate that. Her words caught me off guard, but before I could respond, she glanced down at her phone, checking the time. Anyway, I've got to get going. Just thought I'd say that. I don't get many genuine conversations these days, she added, almost as if it were an afterthought. I watched as she turned to leave, then hesitated. Something about the way she said that last part lingered in my mind. As the door closed behind her, I stood there unsure of what had just happened. Rachel, quiet, reserved, and always in the background, had just opened up to me in a way I wasn't expecting. I thought about it for the rest of the day, my mind replaying her words over and over. It was strange, but I couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to her than I'd ever realized. That maybe she was someone I'd like to get to know better. Little did I know that small conversation would set things into motion in a way I never could have anticipated. It's strange how quickly the lines between work and personal life can blur, especially when something unexpected happens. After that brief encounter in the break room with Rachel, I tried to push it out of my mind, but somehow the memory of her words lingered, and it wasn't long before I saw her again. It was the end of another long day at the office. Most of the team had left, and the building was starting to feel emptier, quieter. I was sitting at my desk finishing up some paperwork when I noticed a message pop up on my screen. It was a direct message, just one line of text from an unfamiliar number. Hey, Evan, I hope it's not too late. Can I talk to you? I'd really appreciate it. I stared at it for a moment, confused. I hadn't given Rachel my personal number. There was no reason she should have it, but then I remembered the office directory. Maybe she'd found it there. I wasn't sure why she would be contacting me, but there was something in the message that made me hesitate. For a moment, I debated whether to respond. I knew how dangerous it could be getting involved with someone at work, especially someone like Rachel. She was married to Mr. Carter, my boss. That alone made everything complicated. But there was something raw about her, something that made me curious in ways I couldn't explain. I typed a quick reply. Sure, what's up? A minute later, another message popped up. Can I meet you somewhere? I just need to talk. It's important. I wasn't sure what was going on, but it felt serious. I didn't even think about it too much before responding. I'm in the office, but we can meet somewhere. Is it okay if we do it after hours? A few moments passed before her response came through. I'll be there in an hour. I'll text you when I'm close. I wasn't sure what to think. I still didn't fully understand why she wanted to talk or what she needed from me, but I couldn't ignore the pull I felt. Something beyond curiosity. There was a sense of urgency in her messages, and something about that made me nervous, but also oddly compelled. I grabbed my coat and left the office. I texted her to confirm the address of a nearby cafe, figuring it would be the safest place to meet. It wasn't crowded at that hour, and it had always been quiet enough for a private conversation. When I got there, I waited. It felt strange knowing she was coming here. Yet I had no idea what to expect. My mind raced with possibilities. What did she want to talk about? Was it just a casual chat? Or was there something more going on beneath the surface? About 20 minutes later, I saw her walking through the door. She looked different than I remembered. There was a quiet intensity about her tonight. She had her hair down and she was wearing a simple coat, but somehow it only made her seem more striking. I stood up as she approached the table and she smiled lightly as she sat down across from me. "Thanks for meeting me," she said, her voice low but steady. "I know this is weird, but I had to talk to someone." I nodded, unsure of what to say. She was the last person I'd expect to be sitting across from me, especially in a setting like this. But there was something about her vulnerability, that made me want to listen. "I just feel like everything's falling apart," she continued, her gaze dropping to the table. "You probably don't understand, but things with Carter, they haven't been good for a long time. And I'm stuck in this life that isn't mine." I didn't know what to say, so I just nodded, letting her talk. "I'm not looking for advice, Evan. I don't want anyone to tell me what I should do," she added quickly, glancing up at me. "But I needed to get this off my chest. I don't have anyone else." Her words hung in the air for a long moment. I didn't know how to respond. Part of me wanted to offer her reassurance, but I also knew this was a dangerous line to cross. She was married. She was my boss's wife. There was no good outcome if things went too far. But I couldn't deny the tension between us, the raw honesty in her voice. "I'm just so tired of pretending," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I need something real, Evan." That was when I realized something. This wasn't just a conversation anymore. There was something more at play here, something neither of us could ignore. I didn't say anything in response immediately. Instead, I just listened. Sometimes that's all you can do when someone is opening up in a way they never have before. But as she continued to talk about her frustration, her loneliness, and the suffocating life she felt trapped in, I couldn't help but feel drawn closer to her. It was then that I realized this wasn't just a casual chat. This was the beginning of something dangerous. And no matter how hard I tried to convince myself to stay distant, I knew I wasn't going to be able to stop myself. I couldn't explain it. As I sat there across from Rachel, listening to her pour out her heart, I felt like I was caught in a storm. I could see the vulnerability in her eyes, the way her hands trembled slightly as she sipped her coffee. The truth was, I didn't know what she wanted from me, but I couldn't deny the magnetic pull that was starting to form between us. "Do you ever feel like you're living someone else's life?" she asked quietly, her voice laced with frustration, "like you're just playing a part and not really living?" "Because that's how it feels for me every day." I nodded slowly, not quite sure how to respond. I wasn't married, didn't have a high-pressure job like she did, but I could understand what she was saying. Everyone feels like that at some point in their life, trapped, suffocated, wishing for something more. "I get it," I said, choosing my words carefully. "Life can be suffocating sometimes. We all have our moments when we question everything." She looked at me, her eyes searching mine for something, answers maybe, or just the reassurance that someone understood. "I don't know why I'm telling you this," she admitted, her voice almost breaking. "I've never talked about this with anyone. I can't talk to Carter. He's never really been there for me, not the way I need him to be." Her words hit me harder than I expected. I couldn't imagine being married to someone like Carter. He was powerful, confident, but not the kind of person who paid attention to the emotional needs of the people around him, especially not his wife. I wanted to say something comforting, to tell her that she deserved better, but I knew better than to overstep. We were walking on a fine line already. I was just her colleague, her husband's employee. There couldn't be anything more between us. But then she did something I wasn't expecting. She leaned in slightly, lowering her voice as if to make sure no one else could hear. "You're different, Evan," she said, her tone almost desperate. "You listen. You actually listen. I don't know why, but I feel safe with you. The words hit me like a wave. I had never really thought of myself as a great listener, but here she was telling me that I was the one person who had made her feel heard in so long. I swallowed, trying to suppress the emotions that were bubbling up. I wasn't equipped to deal with this. I had always kept things professional, kept boundaries. But now, sitting across from her, seeing the sadness and longing in her eyes, I felt like those boundaries were starting to slip away. I'm just, I don't know what to do with all this, she continued. I'm stuck. I don't want to be in this marriage anymore, but I can't just leave. It's not that simple. There was something raw in her voice, something that made me want to reach across the table and comfort her, to tell her that everything would be okay. But I stopped myself. This wasn't my place. I couldn't be the one to offer her a way out. And yet, as much as I tried to push those feelings away, I couldn't help but feel the connection between us growing stronger. She sat back in her chair, looking down at her hands, her expression distant. I know it sounds crazy, but I've been thinking about leaving for a while now. And I don't know why, but I feel like maybe you could be part of that. I don't know if I'm ready, but I needed to say it out loud. Her confession was like a bombshell. I stared at her, not sure how to react. Part of me wanted to reach out and tell her that she deserved better, that she deserved someone who could make her feel loved and wanted, but I knew I couldn't be that person for her. Not like this. I think you should take your time, I said, my voice steady despite the rush of emotions inside. It's a big decision, Rachel. You don't need to make it all at once. She smiled faintly, but it was a sad smile. I don't know if I have the time. I've been living this life for so long, and I don't know how much longer I can keep pretending. The conversation shifted after that, and we spent the next half hour talking about small things, work, the weather, nothing too personal, but the weight of what she had said still hung in the air between us. I didn't know what to make of it, but I knew one thing for sure. I couldn't forget the way she looked at me when she spoke, the way she seemed to be silently pleading for something, anything to change. As we said our goodbyes outside the cafe, I felt a chill run down my spine. I couldn't tell if it was the cool night air or the growing tension between us, but I knew things weren't going to be the same after tonight. I walked back to my apartment, that night my mind racing. This wasn't supposed to be happening. I wasn't supposed to be caught in the middle of this mess, drawn into the web of someone else's troubled marriage. But somehow I was. And now I couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning. The days that followed were a blur. The conversation with Rachel stayed with me, haunting me even as I tried to focus on work. I had to admit I wasn't the same after that night. I couldn't stop thinking about her, the way she looked at me, the way she spoke, the vulnerability that poured out of her. Her words kept echoing in my head. Maybe you could be part of that. What did she mean by that? Was she hinting at something more? Or was she just desperate for someone to understand? I couldn't pretend anymore. The professional distance that had always kept me from crossing boundaries was slipping away. I had to remind myself that Rachel was married to Carter. He was my boss. Whatever feelings were developing between us, they could never be acted on. I knew it was dangerous. I knew it could ruin everything. Yet every time I saw her at the office, that tension, that pull grew stronger. It was a Thursday afternoon when I got the text from her. It was a simple message. Can we meet again? I need to talk. I didn't think twice. I responded quickly, saying I'd be free that evening. I still didn't know where this was going, but I felt like I had no choice. She had opened up to me, and now I couldn't shut her out. We agreed to meet at a different cafe this time, one that was quieter away from the office, where we could talk without the risk of being seen by anyone we knew. As I sat there waiting for her, I realized how strange it was that I was even in this situation. My boss's wife, someone I barely knew just a week ago, had become a fixture in my thoughts. I shouldn't have been this close to her emotionally or physically, but there was no turning back now. When Rachel walked in, she was alone. Her face was different today, more tired, more guarded. She seemed almost fragile, and for a moment I felt a pang of guilt. Was I part of the reason she was falling apart? Hey, she said softly, sitting down across from me. She gave me a small smile, but it didn't reach her eyes. Thanks for meeting me, I nodded. Of course. What's on your mind? She took a deep breath, looking down at her hands. I've been thinking a lot about what I said last time about leaving Carter and what it might mean for me, for us. My heart skipped a beat. I had hoped she wasn't serious, that maybe it was just a moment of weakness. But hearing her say it again made the gravity of the situation sink in. She was serious. This wasn't just idle talk. "I don't know what to do, Evan," she said, her voice trembling slightly. "I feel like I'm suffocating. I've tried to be the good wife, the good mother, but I'm not happy. And the worst part is I don't even know who I am anymore. I just go through the motions every day, pretending everything's fine." I couldn't help but feel for her. I had known for a while that she wasn't happy, that she was trapped in a life that wasn't fulfilling. But hearing her say it out loud made it more real. And the more she talked, the more I understood. She wasn't just unhappy with Carter. She was unhappy with herself, with the life she had built. And the more she spoke, the more I realized that she needed someone to help her find herself again. "I don't know what I can do for you, Rachel," I said quietly, "but you need to make your own decisions. You need to decide what's best for you." She looked up at me, her eyes filled with a mix of frustration and longing. "I don't want to be alone anymore. I don't want to feel like I'm living a lie, but at the same time, I don't know if I'm ready to leave him." Her words hung in the air, heavy with the weight of a decision she wasn't ready to make. I could see the conflict in her eyes. She didn't want to hurt Carter, but at the same time, she couldn't keep pretending to be something she wasn't. "I don't know what's going to happen, Evan," she continued, her voice barely above a whisper. "But I think I need you. I need someone who sees me for who I really am. Not just as Carter's wife or the woman I used to be. I don't know if I'm ready for more, but I don't want to feel alone anymore." I could feel the weight of her words, and it hit me harder than I expected. I wasn't prepared for this. I hadn't signed up for this kind of emotional intensity. But the truth was, I couldn't ignore the connection between us. It was undeniable. And as much as I wanted to push it away to tell her I couldn't help her, I knew I couldn't do that either. "I'm not sure what you want from me, Rachel," I said softly, my voice trembling with the tension that was building between us. "But I'll be here to listen, and if you need to talk, I'll listen." She reached across the table, her hand trembling slightly as she placed it on mine. I froze. Her touch sent a shock through me, and I immediately pulled back, my heart racing. "I don't know what comes next," she whispered, her voice filled with uncertainty. "But I know I can't keep living this way." I nodded, feeling the weight of her words settle into my chest. I had no idea what was coming next either, but I knew one thing for sure. I was in deeper than I had ever imagined, and I couldn't pull away now. It had been months since that night we had shared our first kiss, and every day since had been filled with tension and uncertainty. Rachel and I had kept our secret meeting in hidden corners, sharing stolen moments and pretending that nothing had changed. But it had. And now the weight of it all was unbearable. I knew she was ready. I could see it in her eyes every time we met. The guilt, the fear, but also the longing for something more, something real, something we could both have without the walls and lies that had kept us apart. And finally, I knew it was time to make the choice. We couldn't keep living in the shadows. Tonight was the night. I sent her a message earlier, telling her I needed to see her. My heart raced as I waited for her reply. She knew what was coming. I could tell from her short response, "I'll be there in an hour." I didn't know what to expect when she arrived, but as soon as she stepped through the door, I saw the resolution in her eyes. The decision had been made. I wasn't sure where we would go from here, but I knew one thing: we were no longer going to hide. "Evan," she said softly, her voice filled with emotion, "I've made up my mind. I'm leaving him." I felt a rush of relief, but also fear. This wasn't going to be easy. It wasn't going to be some perfect fairy tale where everything fell into place. But it was real. It was our choice. We were choosing each other, choosing a life together, benign if it meant leaving everything behind. "Are you sure?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. I needed to hear her say it. I needed to know that this was her decision, not just a desperate escape. "I'm sure," she replied, taking a step closer to me. "I can't live a lie anymore. I can't stay with someone who doesn't understand me, someone who doesn't love me the way you do. I've been miserable for so long, and I'm done with it. I want to be with you, Evan. I want a future with you." Her words were like a weight lifted from my chest. I stepped forward, taking her hands in mine. "I want that too, Rachel. But it's not going to be easy. We have to be ready for what's coming. It's not just about us. It's about everything we're leaving behind. She nodded, tears glistening in her eyes. I know, but we can't keep pretending. We can't keep living in fear of what might happen. I've made my decision, and I'm ready to face whatever comes next. We stood there for a moment, the silence between us heavy but comforting. I had never been so sure of anything in my life. I had known for a long time that we were meant to be together. But now, with her standing here ready to take that step, it felt real. We had a future ahead of us, one that didn't involve hiding, one that didn't involve lies. I'll help you, I said, my voice firm. We'll figure it out. We'll leave together and we'll build something new. No more secrets. No more lies. Rachel smiled through her tears. Thank you, she whispered. We spent the next few hours packing her things, making arrangements, and talking about what our life would look like once we left. It was scary. It was uncertain, but it was ours, and that was enough. By morning, everything was set. We had rented a car and planned to drive to a small town far away from the life we had known. It wasn't glamorous. It wasn't perfect, but it was a fresh start. It was the first day of the rest of our lives. As we stood at the door ready to leave, I looked at Rachel one last time, and I knew without a doubt that this was the right decision. We were finally free. She smiled her hand in mine. Let's go, she said softly, her voice full of hope. And together we walked out the door, ready to begin our new life. No more secrets, no more lies, just us facing the future together. And for the first time in a long time, I felt truly happy. 3 years had passed since that fateful night when Rachel and I made the decision to leave behind the lies we knew to build something new. It hadn't been easy, but it had been worth every struggle, every sacrifice. The road to happiness hadn't been smooth, but it had led us here to a small house on the outskirts of a quiet town where no one knew our names. And that was exactly how we wanted it. I woke up early that morning, the sound of birds chirping outside signaling the beginning of another day. It was a Sunday and the house was still quiet. I lay there for a moment listening to the peaceful silence before I felt Rachel shift beside me. She was still asleep, her face calm and content, the way it had been for the past few years. I couldn't help but smile as I watched her. In the 3 years since we'd left everything behind, she had transformed. She was more relaxed, more herself than I had ever seen her. There was no longer the weight of guilt or fear in her eyes. The woman lying next to me was strong, confident, and happy, and I had helped her get there. The sound of our 2 sons running through the house broke the silence. Their laughter filled the air, pure and untainted by the world's harsh realities. Luke, our oldest at 5, and Jack, who was 3, were the light of our lives. They brought so much joy and chaos into our world, and every day felt like a gift. I glanced over at Rachel, who was slowly waking up, a soft smile spreading across her face as she heard the boys. Morning, she whispered, her voice still groggy, but filled with warmth. Morning, I replied, reaching over to pull her close. How'd you sleep like a rock, she said, settling into my arms. It's crazy how peaceful it is here. I still can't believe this is our life now. I know, I said, looking out the window at the sunlight streaming through the trees. It feels like a dream sometimes. A good dream, Rachel chuckled softly. A very good dream. We both lay there for a moment listening to our sons play in the other room. Then, as if on cue, Luke burst into the bedroom, followed closely by Jack. They climbed into the bed with us, their little feet kicking the covers as they snuggled in. Mommy, Daddy Luke shouted, his face lighting up with excitement. Can we go to the park today? Of course, Rachel replied, her smile widening. We'll go after breakfast. I leaned over and kissed both of them on the forehead. What about you, Jack? Do you want to go to the park too? Jack nodded vigorously, his chubby cheeks puffing out as he smiled. Park, we all laughed, and I couldn't help but feel overwhelmed with gratitude. This life, this family was everything I had ever wanted, and it was all real. We had worked hard to get here, to this place of peace and happiness. The decision to leave the past behind had been the right one, no matter how difficult it had been. As we made our way downstairs for breakfast, I took a moment to look around the small house we had made our home. It wasn't much, but it was ours. It was cozy, comfortable, and filled with memories. It was everything we needed. Rachel and I worked together to get the boys' breakfast ready, the familiar rhythm of our daily routine comforting in its simplicity. We talked about plans for the day, nothing big, just a trip to the park, maybe a quiet afternoon at home and some time to enjoy the simple pleasures of life. We were no longer living in the shadows, no longer burdened by the past. We had built a life from scratch, and it was exactly what we had wanted. As we ate breakfast, I thought back to the early days when everything had seemed so uncertain. When we had made that choice to leave everything behind and build something new, I never could have imagined this life. But here we were 3 years later, and it was more than I had ever dreamed possible. Rachel caught my eye across the table, and I could see the love and gratitude in her gaze. She reached over, squeezing my hand. "We did it, didn't we?" I smiled, squeezing her hand back. "Yeah, we did. We made it." Our sons continued to chatter away, oblivious to the weight of the journey we had taken to get here. But that was the beauty of it. They didn't need to know the struggles we had faced, the doubts we had overcome. All they needed to know was that they were loved and that their parents had made a choice to create a life of happiness for them. As the morning went on, we packed up for the park, the boys excited to be outside and explore. We spent the afternoon playing, laughing, and enjoying each other's company. The world outside was still full of challenges and uncertainties, but in that moment, none of that mattered. What mattered was that we were together. We had made it through the hard times, and now we had everything we needed. That evening, as we sat on the porch watching the sunset and listening to our boys play in the yard, I felt a sense of peace settle over me. This life we had built was real. We had each other. We had our family, and we had the future ahead of us. The past was behind us, and it had led us here to this perfect, imperfect life. I looked at Rachel one last time that evening as the sun dipped below the horizon, and I knew without a doubt that this was where we were meant to be. We had found our place in the world together, and for the first time in a long time, I felt completely at peace. We had made it, and now we were ready for whatever the future held. The story of Evan and Rachel is a powerful testament to the courage it takes to choose authenticity over a life of pretense. Rachel's journey from a suffocating marriage to a life filled with love and purpose teaches us that true happiness lies in embracing our truth, no matter how daunting the path. Her vulnerability in sharing her struggles with Evan and his willingness to listen without judgment remind us that sometimes the most profound connections are forged in moments of raw honesty. This story challenges us to confront the parts of our lives that feel inauthentic and to seek relationships that allow us to be fully seen. It's a call to prioritize our emotional well-being, even when it means leaving behind familiarity for the unknown. Evan and Rachel's leap into a new life, building a family grounded in love, shows that while the road to fulfillment is rarely easy, it's worth every step when it leads to a life that feels true. We all deserve to live without shadows, to find peace in being ourselves. What resonated with you in Evan and Rachel's story? Have you ever made a bold choice to pursue your truth? Share your reflections in the comments below. We'd love to hear your story. If this moved you, please like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon to join our community of heartfelt stories. Let's keep exploring life's deepest lessons together.